I think the odds of a U.S. recession are still below 50-50, but I think they're getting close. And I think that does make them greater than they were any time since 2001. Why? Housing is collapsing. Consumer uncertainty is way up as the value of their houses goes down, and their certainty about what their houses are worth go down. Important financial strains that will constrain the lending of many banks. Many banks that made backup commitments are now making loans that they had no idea they ever would. They'll carry through on those loans, but the risk is that they'll cut back on other loans, which will cut back on other investment projects. So I think there is a real risk that we will have a recession. And I think there is a small risk, perhaps 1 in 10, perhaps a bit less than that, that this will not just be a mild recession of the kind we had in 2001, but will be a more consequential event with more global consequences. In the 70s, they cut off the supply of oil, and so we had much higher prices of oil. Today, nobody's cut off the supply of oil, it's just the world economy is growing much faster, and that pushes the price of oil up. That's a much more healthy source of high oil prices. The dollar, look, a country that is borrowing $800 billion a year can't do that forever. And as people wake up to the fact that it can't do it forever, the way in which they respond is to be less willing to hold dollars. And that in turn makes U.S. exports more competitive relative to U.S. imports. And so that the dollar has declined can't be a surprise to any thoughtful observer of the global economy over the last few years. Interest rates reflect the nature of the supply and the demand for capital, and we're running into a period when people are a little less confident, and so there's a little more demand, a little less demand for capital, and there's a little more supply of capital as people rein it in and decide not to spend, and so that all puts some downwards pressure on interest rates, and that's what we've seen over the last few months. What is remarkable today, and we've never had it before, is that the net flow of capital is from the developing world, is from emerging markets, from the petrodollar countries, from countries like China and other rapidly growing countries in Asia, to the industrial countries. And we've never seen anything like that before. And it raises lots of questions. You know, how come they're not giving that money to their own citizens to consume is one important question. And so inevitably they're branching out and diversifying, and that's probably a good thing for them, and it may be a good thing for the world if it allows more capital to flow into risky investments. But it's going to come with some complicated questions. How are we going to feel the day that a foreign government buys the New York Times? How are the British going to feel the day that a foreign government oil company buys their pipeline system? These are all going to be difficult questions that are raised by this accumulation of capital, and I think there's going to be no alternative but providing better fora for discussion than the traditional G7, which probably was the right forum for discussing the international economic issues a generation ago, when they were mostly about the United States, Europe, and Japan, but probably is not the right forum today. You look at rates of internet connectivity, you look at long distance phone charges, you look at port fees, you look at a whole variety of indicators, and Latin America has put more rocks in its harbors than producers than countries on other continents. And I think as it takes those rocks out of its harbors with the right kinds of reform of policy, you'll see some real results in terms of growth, as you've seen somewhat more rapid growth in the last few years in Mexico. You've seen an accelerating pattern of growth in Brazil and in a number of other countries.